The death throes and final craven acts of sleepy Joe Biden's presidency must surely live in infamy. For years we were told by the mainstream on both sides of the Atlantic to view the incumbent in the Kremlin as a gangster, which is ironic given that the departing President of the United States of America has been fully revealed as the head of a crime syndicate, no more and no less. As befits a crime boss, in his last hours and even minutes in the Oval Office, he issued a tsunami of pardons, pre-emptive pardons, for his lieutenants and other goons. Before that, he had had the brass neck to deliver a farewell speech to his citizens, in which he warned them to beware of the steadily expanding power of what he called the oligarchs of the internet. Reclaim the Net carried a story headlined "Biden warns of tech oligarchs' power in farewell speech, ignoring his own role in expanding digital censorship." And I quote, outgoing President Joe Biden concluded his presidency with a farewell address on Wednesday night, sharply criticising what he termed the tech industrial complex, while urging tighter accountability for social media platforms. These were the same social media platforms that, while Biden was at large, pushed the massive lie about Trump colluding with Russia in pursuit of power, a hoax for which the Hillary Clinton camp later admitted guilt, and then the ruthless suppression of the truth about the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, not to mention the suppression of facts and the downright lying about the COVID pandemic and the associated jabs. When it comes to the tech industrial complex, it seems they were good enough guys when serving the Biden cabal, but not so good when doing the bidding of anyone else. Biden and his cronies have seen to it by their behaviour that the office of President of the United States of America has been utterly degraded, until it's simultaneously a sick joke and also an ever-present threat to peace and the rule of law around the world. It will be up to Donald J. Trump to take it from there, to seek the sunlit uplands, we might hope. But in the tradition of bad taste comedy, Biden's closing remarks even cribbed from Dwight D. Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex. Quote, 6 decades later, I am equally concerned, he said, about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country, enabling an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation. No comment needed there, beyond, perhaps, "You're kidding, right, Joe?" He had the unmitigated gall to lament Facebook Supremo Mark Zuckerberg's self-serving abandonment of what they call fact-checking. Biden said, "The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking." He even said, right out there where people could hear him, "We must hold the social media platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power." I already mentioned the lies around COVID and the pandemic. This is still on YouTube.
The various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah.
Also, in the last gasp of his term, Biden issued a slew of what they call pre-emptive pardons for all his little wizards. The tsunami of whitewash coated the entire Biden family, the living legend that is Anthony Fauci, neocon and enthusiastic warmonger Liz Cheney, January 6 committee members, and many more besides. Now, where to begin with the questions? For starters, if you've done nothing wrong, why do you need to be pardoned? For those innocent souls still trusting some sort of lawful process, it might also be legitimate to ponder a process that provides pardons of any sort to people who haven't, at least not yet, actually been convicted of a crime. Call me naive, but it's been my understanding that in the traditional, even old-fashioned run of things, a person had first to be tried and convicted before notions like pardons could apply. US history buffs will reply that there's precedent, right enough. President Richard Nixon, he of the Watergate scandal, was preemptively pardoned by President Gerald Ford back in 1974. So, what's sauce for the goose and all that? But Biden's preemptive pardons prompt more questions yet. Anthony Fauci's get out of jail free card is backdated, like that earlier pardon received by Hunter Biden, all the way back to 2014. That's long before COVID and all that jazz. So again, why? Did someone mention bioweapons labs in Ukraine and China? Did someone mention gain-of-function research? President number 47, Donald J. Trump, had all sorts to say about Biden's Festival of Pardons. It's no secret to point out that he's not over fond of the aforementioned Liz Cheney. He had this to say about her and her warlike ways.
You know, when you don't want to kill people in wars, they turn against you. Liz Cheney hated the concept of not going to war with everybody. Let's kill everybody. Let's spend a lot of money on military equipment, you know, where her father works, right?
It's also worth knowing that a person isn't actually obliged to accept such a pardon. Presumably, the sort of person who saw no need and said, "Thanks, but I'm good," might be one confident they had, done nothing wrong. Sky Australia highlighted recent tweets by Donald Trump Jr. in relation to the infamous Dr. Fauci. And it's also worth noting that just days before he did the deed, old Joe had actually gone so far as to rule out the need for pardons for anyone, including the man himself.
For myself?
Yes, sir.
What would I pardon myself for?
That's what I'm asking.
No, I have no contemplation of pardoning myself for anything. I didn't do anything wrong.
Some names on the list of pardons may be less familiar than others. Adam Kinzinger was a January 6th committee member, part of the witch hunt then. He too is on record airily dismissing the need for get-out-of-jail-free cards issued to people as yet to see the inside of a courtroom facing charges of any sort.
But the second you take a pardon, it looks like you're guilty of something.
The hypocrisy, the pot calling the kettle black nature of what Biden has done is laid bare when set in the context of what his supporters had to say when the shoe was on the other foot. And they all got on their high horses about the prospect of President Trump issuing pardons when he was president first time around. Another from the January 6th committee, preemptively cleared by Biden of any future charges of any sort of wrongdoing, whatever, is one Jamie Raskin.
The seeking of pardons is powerful demonstration of the consciousness of guilt, or at least the consciousness that you may be in trouble. And that's what's so shocking about this.
Also previously certain about the message sent out by such pardons when those cards were in the hands of Trump during his first presidency was Senator Chuck Schumer.
There's a simple answer. No. No, Mr. President. That would be a gross abuse of the presidential pardon authority.
The mainstream media had been unhappy about the prospect of Trump pardons too. Here's Joy Reid.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person.
And there, Reid was talking to Senator Adam Schiff, full of confected indignation about pardons in Trump's hands back in 2020, but also himself now in receipt of a Biden pardon.
It's the president's own family. It's people that had been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
Just 4 years ago, President Biden said there would be no preemptive pardons for his family or anyone else. What Biden has done with his final act is admit that the justice system in the United States of America can be and is used and abused for personal gain, personal protection, and perhaps most egregious of all, as a weapon for attacking and eliminating opponents.
At GBNews, we believe in the power of free speech. We're not afraid to ask the tough questions, challenge the status quo, and give you a voice. While others silence dissent, we champion the truth. By becoming a GB News member, you're not just supporting free speech, you're defending it. Please consider supporting us today. Together, we'll hold the powerful to account and make sure that your voice is always heard. Simply go to gbnews.com/support and stand with us for what matters most.
Yet another valid question, part of the bigger picture, is whether this sort of presidential pardon is even legal. And that's if legal means anything anyway now. I mentioned the precedent of Ford pardoning Nixon the same way back in '74, but questions are still worth asking. Perhaps most important of all is to ask what happened to the law, the actual law, that which is lawful, not just in the US, but here in the UK and around the world. There are ancient reasons why civilization once upon a time accepted that the law existed in a place where it could not be touched by mankind. It was just the law, received, untouchable, inviolable, and therefore literally out of the reach of grubby, grasping, self-serving rulers above all. Common law, upon which our law is raised here in the United Kingdom, and also the law of the United States, makes plain that no one is above that law. Not kings, not presidents, not the president's pals, no one. This is of the utmost importance. The utmost importance that the law is not written by men or women. The law just is. We know it without needing to be told what's right and what's wrong. The law is simple enough for a child to understand. And so when you encounter anyone writing what can only accurately be described as workarounds, which is to say ways of dodging and manipulating the law, then that person's a crook, pure and simple. Forget Biden, almost. This is much bigger than the egregious behaviour of any one president of the United States, any self-serving and craven head of state anywhere. The ultimate question is this: if a so-called lawful democracy, one where law is of, by and for the people, if the citizens of that so-called democracy, that so-called republic, accept that exemption from justice for those in the favour of the president is lawful, if that is the plight and reality of the law, then all bets are truly off.